On this episode of Team Building Saves the World.
That's the future for at least the next 5 years, which I wouldn't have said 3 years ago, right?
I was just going to go there next. You keep ticking all of my magic boxes here.
Make the content really compelling. Make sure that they can dive into it, engage with it, participate with it, see what, learn from it, right?
I think just having that, like you were calling it, that safe space to fail will be a huge dynamic shift from what it was before.
Yeah. Big time. And quite honestly, not only fail, but repeat and try again. And I think that's really important.
Hello, team. Once again, it's me, your old friend Rich Friedensland, host of Team Building Saves the World, the show where I speak to the leaders and innovators of the team building industry from all across the globe, trying to find out what about that industry is so important, especially in the world of today. And today we're talking about gaming and how it can help with employee engagement with the Chief Creative Officer at the gaming agency, Stephen Bear. But first, I need to share some love with my supporters at TeamBonding. If your team is ready to experience teamwork through the power of play, then visit TeamBonding.com to learn more. Now, team, please join me in welcoming the co-founder and managing partner of the gaming agency and the co-creator of the Training Arcade, as well as a monthly contributor to Forbes.com, Mr. Stephen Bear. Stephen, that is a small supply of people I keep trapped under my desk just to applaud you. That's why they're there. How are you today, sir?
I'm real good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. Listen, could you do me a favor? Just start off, Liz, nice and simple. Tell my team a little bit about who you are and what it is you do in this industry.
Sure. So my name is Steve Bear, as you mentioned. About 15 years ago, I was one of the founders of a company called the Game Agency, and we make games, custom games, as well as turnkey games through our platform called the Training Arcade for a combination of things, mostly K through 12 and college education, as well as corporate training. And my job in particular is I'm really run all creative here. So I get to have a lot of fun, focused on design, storytelling, engagement, and different ways of just making our stuff more polished and interesting.
Excellent. You mentioned the magic word of fun. A lot of people, when they think of gaming, the first thing comes to their mind would be fun. How is fun important in what you do?
Well, so in particular, when you think about using games for purposes of training, which is often considered the exact opposite of fun, right? You want to make sure that you think about what mediums, and games is exactly what we focus on, to make it more interesting, right? So more fun someone's having, the more times they're going to actually engage with it, the longer, the more repetition. And the reality is, as a result of that, you're going to see the content actually sticking. So we have so many studies that talk about the more fun it is, the more they learn, the more they retain, and then the more they're able to apply on their day-to-day job. And that's the whole goal.
And how does that work? I mean, what is it about us playing a game that is so different from us just answering a questionnaire or sitting down and listening to countless people going on about, the area we're going to be working in, the subject matter, the employees, so on and so forth?
So I always boil it down to passive versus active learning, right? So if you're going to sit there and watch a video, or you're going to read some content, or otherwise, a lot of it's going to pass right past you, right? Because you're not actually actively engaging with the content. But if you're playing a game and you're required to, and one of the things I love about the work that we do with team bonding is you're required to actually participate. Right. And by participating, you're going to get the information, you're going to engage with the information, and you're going to retain the information. So, yeah, it's a big difference between passive and active experience.
But how does it work? Give me an example of what it looked like before. I mean, what kind of training processes or just even employee retention that we see?
Yeah. We do, and I want to pull up a chart if I can during this talk, but we talk a lot about the traditional passive that we discussed, right? And you look at a lot of the media types, whether it's reading or watching videos or even listening to lectures, and you're seeing that within a 30-day period, 85-90% of what you learned is gone. It's gone. We always talk about what a crazy media-filled world we all live in, and there's so many messages that we're getting every day that why would this thing that I learned in a book a month ago stick with me, versus the 5 million things that I've read or heard since then, right? Mm. So that's the old way of doing stuff. And one of the things that we've focused on really over the last almost 15 years is trying to make it a much more active experience. And the neat thing is we've seen a few things. So, in particular, the work that we do with TeamBonding is in our platform, the Training Arcade. We see a few things. We see that people come back and they play our games. We did a study of, I think, 2,500 games, and we saw that 57% of people came back and they played each game 3 or more times. Well, that's pretty amazing, right? Yeah. And not only that, it's great that they came back, they enjoyed it, but we saw, and I hate the fact that these stats are so similar, but of those 57%, there was a 58% growth in knowledge between the first time they played and the third time they played. So it actually stuck because you're reinforcing the information. You're giving feedback to someone. You're saying, oh, you got that wrong, but here's the right answer. And here's why. And get an extra few points if you get this right. And the whole point is you make it a fun, immersive, engaging experience.
Okay. And what does that give you? I mean, what does it tell you on your end of the spectrum? Because you've got the employee is going in, they're playing the games, they're learning, they're retaining, all great. But what does it tell you about them?
Well, I think it depends on the type of game, right? Okay. So, there are some games that are focused on, hey, this person just is really good at recall. Okay, that's good. That's important that they know the information. But you may also want to think about games that are going to tell you about soft skills. Right, this person is really good, and they, as we're seeing in the way that they're interacting in this game, they have the skills to be in sales or negotiations or customer service. Or you might look at something and say, well, this type of game requires a little more strategic, deduction, right? And you might want to say this person has the ability; they might be management quality. And there are all different types of game mechanics that can give you lots of ideas about what skills somebody is good at, what behavioral trends they have. And it's not just about what they know, it's how they behave. So once you're able to take the combination of those two things, you can really optimize your workforce. And you can say, this person maybe needs these skills. I need to upskill them in this area. Or this person really excels in this category. Mm-hmm. I need to move them into this type of job role because, gosh, they'd be perfect in a sales role based on the things I'm seeing, the way that they are engaging in this soft skills game or whatnot.
When, before the world changed, almost 2 years ago now, certainly a year and a half rather, when I was doing things live, I could tell, because I focused a lot on those puzzle games, a lot on those escape room type of events. And I could tell you within the first 15 minutes which team was going to win. They were going to be the first ones done, the first ones to get it all correct. And I always said that I could tell because I could tell which one has natural leadership working within their group. Somebody who is keeping everybody motivated, keeping everybody moving, and can see and get rid of the superfluous. Is that the kind of thing you look for or that you can find?
I think that is one of the things you can see. And I think that's a great example, right? Because you're quickly seeing someone's behavioral skills, right? You're able to see the way that teams interact. And that's one of the great things about games, right? Games can be a single player experience. It could be, you sit in your own little silo and you experience this, and I can tell, the decisions you're making and the results of your decisions and how that impacted your next decision and so forth. Or I can put you in a group like you're talking about and see, how people are relating to each other, who's bubbling up as a leader of that team, whether there's friction between people, whether people are collaborating or they're competing with each other, and quickly, to your very point, within just a few minutes, you can quickly guess how they're going to perform.
Because I've also seen that competitive side come out, and usually it starts off with our team's better than your team, we're going to beat you. But that can quickly turn on the team itself. So looking at things like that, what kind of education do you think that the employee will need going forward from there?
Well, I think that let me make sure I understand the question correctly, because when I think about the things that the games can tell, I think they can tell very quickly. One, does this person do these players have the ability to collaborate with each other, right? Do they have good listening skills? Do they have good observation skills? Are they applying those properly, right? And I think that your example of Escape the Room is a perfect example for something like that. But there are all sorts of games out there, right? There are other types of puzzlers where you're basically looking at process, or you're looking at identifying categorization, or you're thinking about just basic trivia. And I think that some relate and some don't to exactly what we're talking about here. And I think the wonderful things about games is not only are they fun, and not only do they give you lots of ideas of who the person is, but they give you so much data behind the individual, behind what they know, how they behave. And you can quickly take that data and say, all right, few things. Quickly, I see in this room 30% of the people don't understand this. Let's stop and talk about it. Okay, that's one thing you could do. Okay. You could also say, hey, I see that this person over here, or this team over here, they negotiated the heck out of this situation just perfectly. Let's stop and have them tell us about why they did what they did, right? So not only can you celebrate what someone's done, but you can really lift them on a podium and have them really act as your second instructor to the group as to why they did what they did and why it worked, right?
But now you're talking about seeing games, because what I largely work in is games in group dynamics. Because being in team bonding, everything is about building up and showing them where they fit within that team. What about individual teams, people who are just, they're gamers going on your website and just playing a game for themselves? Are we getting the same? Do we get the same kind of skill base? Do we get the same kind of differentiation of their personalities?
Yeah, you sure do. I mean, it depends on the game you're playing. So if you play, our scenarios game, which is a branching dialogue, you could go down any type of path. So it could be sales training, it could be customer service training, it could be negotiation training, putting them in different situations and then quickly seeing how they perform. And the nice thing is that with a game like scenarios, you're going to not only see how they're performing, but you're going to give them an opportunity to refine their decisions based on the feedback they get. You also allow them to go back and look at the history of how they performed or how they've answered something, so they can kind of hopefully analyze, well, hold on, should I be going down a different route? So that's one type of game. Then there's games like our detective game, which is less about a choose your own adventure and more about analyzing a situation, right? Where you might say, well, what's the root cause of this situation? Or, what is the impact of this company versus this company, or this group versus this group? And having someone look at the whole picture and really identify from a strategic side where something's going and why it's going that way, and what are the right decisions to hopefully right size the situation, right? And those are two good examples in my mind of an individual can kind of jump into a game like those. And those could be on any topic. Those could be on hiring people correctly. Those could be on mergers and acquisitions. Those could be on, change management. I mean, it's all sorts of different things you can, focus on.
So Stephen, if you can hold on for me for just 1 second here, because we've been talking about them all along, but I do want to make sure and tell my team out there about a company I am very proud to be a part of, TeamBonding. TeamBonding was founded over 20 years ago with one simple question: how can employees have a great time while fostering strong, authentic bonds between people who work together? They've created a catalog of innovative events using the power of play as a learning tool and tapping into the correlation of work and play. From scavenger hunts to Jeopardy and so much more, the team bonding of activities, live, virtual, and hybrid, maximizes the impact of the team building with an accent on fun. Visit TeamBonding.com to schedule your event now. Team Bonding, when you want seriously fun results. And we're back with Stephen Bear talking just about that kind of gaming and how it affects your employees. So in the live read right there, I was also talking about the live, virtual, and hybrid. What do you think works best, Stephen? I mean, you've seen all of it by this point,
Yeah, well, I think we've all learned a lot over the last 18 months.
Yeah.
Right? And the reality is, and we talk about this a lot, is that you think about, it doesn't matter what company people are at. People are so burned out at this point because the sheer exhaustion of trying to navigate through this entire pandemic.
Yeah.
Right. So the amazing thing is that I feel like virtual games have really change the way that people interact with each other because they've just been forced to do so from the comfort of their own homes, and actually, find little ways of actually interacting, engaging, bonding with their colleagues, right? And so I think that there's been a behavioral change period in the way that people interact with them. So I think that people have morphed to being comfortable with using games that way. I will say that, after, 22 months, I finally went back to a trade show this, last month with ATD. And at that trade show, it was amazing to just see people in a room together, engaging with each other.
Right.
I think that people miss that. Everyone's masked up still, and hopefully I'm vaccinated, but, nonetheless, the reality is that I think people are yearning for that experience again. We've seen, and I think that this is where it gets really creative. Organizations that have figured out how to do the hybrid experience, I think, are the ones that are going to really be the winners in the long run, because I don't think it's going to be one or the other for a very long time. Sure. I think at the end of the day, people are trepidatious about getting back, into what we knew 2 years ago. And I think that if I were a betting man, which I am, I would say that, the hybrid experience is really what needs to be optimized. And so, to me, what that means, and I'll just use Jeopardy as an example, because you mentioned that earlier, is really understanding not only how to engage an audience in person as well as, from afar, but having the technology to do that too, right? Because you want everyone to feel included. You want everyone to feel like they're just as important regardless of where they're located. You want everyone to feel like they're engaging with the content at the same time, at the same speed, and that they're working with the facilitator or, their team or their competition, and they feel like they're part of it. So I think, to me, that is where the money is. I think that's where, and I don't mean the dollars. I mean, in my mind, that's where people need to be focusing their efforts, because that's the future for at least the next 5 years, which I wouldn't have said 3 years ago. Right?
Okay, but what do you see? What do you hope to find as we go forward? Because, like you said, this is not going to change things. Even if, God willing, we lose the whole COVID element within the next year, this is now a working model. And people, we've talked on this very podcast about the Great Resignation. We've talked about people have, moved their entire family from one location to another because they wanted to get away from the congested city life that they have, but now they don't want to go back. So
not only do they not want to go back, but we were just talking about this earlier today in our own company, right? We're working on a company-wide meeting. Well, it's 150 people. I'm trying to think about who the heck actually wants to go travel anymore, right? So a few years ago we would go down to Key West or to Ojai, California, or to Phoenix or somewhere fun as a big group. Everyone says, nah, I'm okay. I'll just stay at home. Yeah. So how do you engage that person? How do you make them feel like they are really an important part of the community? If you can't take them out to drinks, if you can't, do some sort of team bonding thing with them in person, you need to think about the ways to make them feel like they are really part of your culture and it's ongoing. So maybe that is, finding that weekly happy hour that you do as a team and trying to make sure that you support people. And then one of the things to also think about is sometimes it's not just about a game or an experience. Right. So when we talk about the difference between games and gamification. So I kind of just, for any of your listeners who don't know the difference, I think that it's really important to think about a game as something you're going to just hop in, you're going to play, and you're done. You might come back and do it again, right? But a gamification experience is really looking at holistically levels of competition, points, badges, leaderboards, prizes, and trying to make sure that you think about all sorts of things that might actually drive those things, right? So it may not just be playing a game. It might be watch these many videos, do these tasks, read this material, log on to the network and, share some best practices with your colleagues, but ways of actually motivating and activating your employees or your audience to do anything. And I think that's one of the things that companies are more and more thinking about. How do we use gamification as a whole to engage people, regardless of whether they're in our office, in their homes, or elsewhere?
Excellent, because I was just going to go there next. You keep ticking all of my magic boxes here because I wanted to talk about the employee culture. I have been at this job with TeamBonding since 2009 myself, and I've seen it where we get the return clients who every 6 months, every year would get their people back together again and would fly me out somewhere, and I would get together with all their management level people, and we would do a fun event together, so on and so forth. How can gaming actually assist with the full culture now? Because like you say, it's going to be the successful company is going to be the one that can actually navigate between being live together, being virtual, or a combination of the two.
This past 2 years have been incredibly pivotal for us as a business. As you kind of imagine, gaming, distant experiences, virtual experiences have just been on fire. And so in addition to building out virtual gameplay, one of the things that we built and launched and have seen a lot of adoption is what we call our arcade. And so our arcade plugs into any website, plugs into any learning management system. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is the companies that are really adopting ways of engaging their employees, motivating their employees, activating their employees, are giving them daily, weekly, monthly tasks to do, and really dangling that carrot, if you will, right? It's thinking about what things do we want you as an employee to do to better yourself, to improve your career, to improve your division, and so on and so forth. And it's not just about, we want you to drive more sales, or it's not just that we want you to take this course. It's not just that we want you to share best practices. It's that we have this whole variety of goals that we want you to do as an employee, and thinking about giving an ecosystem where you can drive that, and motivation, whether it's intrinsic motivation or extrinsic motivation, really motivating that employee to participate in the greater cause, if you will.
Okay. Where does this start for an employee?
I think that the neat thing is that it not only is a start as a new employee in the onboarding process, but there's so many touch points, right? So to me, you can really take something like this concept and apply it from the day one that someone starts at a company with onboarding, and making sure that they understand the culture, making sure they understand the products and the processes and the services and all that type of stuff. But you can really layer this into a whole variety of things. So whether you're training, on sales training, or you're training on compliance training, or you're training on diversity, inclusion, the whole point is make the content really compelling. Make sure that they can dive into it, engage with it, participate with it, see what, learn from it, right? And also make it a safe place to fail. At the end of the day, people don't like to look bad in front of their colleagues, but if they're in their own little ecosystem, they can try stuff out. They can see what works. They can make sure that they hopefully are getting smarter and better in a safe zone, and in a zone where they're going to be motivated to do so, whether it's based on pricing or experiential or otherwise. I believe that a well-built gamification program is going to be sprinkled throughout someone's career and throughout the journey that someone has at a company. It's not just something that's a one-stop like a game. It's something that should be part of the employee experience.
Okay. So tell me, let's say that I'm a manager or even a CEO. Tell me why I should be making this a part of my everyday for my employees. Because everything was fine up to a year and a half ago. Now you're telling me I need to do this as well. So why?
So I think that the big why is that, one, people are burned out. They want a level of motivation. They want a level of engagement. As you talked about earlier, the Great Resignation, what is it, like 40% of the people in this country say that they have either quit or they plan on quitting, or they're thinking about quitting, right?
Right.
That's why you need to change things. It's not where we were 2 years ago, right? So, well, what is the form of motivation that you can do? What's the form of way of getting people to interact with each other, compete with each other, collaborate with each other? It's kind of got to turn things on their head and think about what were the things as children that drove us to do certain things. Those things, those instincts haven't gone away, but we're now in a much more structured environment, a corporate environment. Maybe we need to bring some of that fun back. Maybe we need to make sure that we're having people engage with each other and content, and we're incentivizing them to do things we want to in a new way, right? No one wants to read a PowerPoint. No one wants to watch an hour-long video. No one wants to read a 200-page manual. It's just that people don't want to do that. And so we have to think about meeting people where they are. So whether it is taking games that are obviously interesting to people, whether it's taking micro content, which is digestible by people, whether it's incentivizing them with prizes and incentivizing them with experiences. I think you just need to meet people where they are today.
What kind of examples do you have? I mean, you talked about the detective game, which immediately that inspired me to want to know more. But what kind of games do you offer, and what do they teach you? I mean, what can I learn about myself is what I'm looking for here.
Yeah, so we break our games down into a few different categories. So I'll start with things like just basic recall. Okay, so recall is less about it's going to teach me about myself. It's going to help me understand what I know and what I don't, and it's going to reinforce the stuff that I don't know and teach it to me. Right?
Okay.
Games, in my mind, should be used less for just assessment, but also as a teaching opportunity. So under that category of games that we have for recall, you mentioned earlier we have the official license to Jeopardy, and we've been working with Sony Productions on that for the last few years, and have that as a single player game as well as audience facilitated game, group play. We also launched maybe about half a year ago Wheel of Fortune, and that's been a wonderful game. And the reason I like those two is despite the fact that they are 35, 40-year-old intellectual properties,
right.
They're properties that everybody understands, everybody knows, everyone's comfortable with. And the last thing you want when it comes to a game is for someone to be trepidatious about getting in and playing. You want someone to be able to pick it up, play, feel comfortable, and hopefully have fun, right? Okay. So those fall into that category. We also have other games that fall into the recall category, like an endless jumper. So if you're familiar with doodle jumping, you're jumping from platform to platform, answering questions, avoiding obstacles. Okay. That one actually has, when I talk about the fact that some of our games have 3 or more replays, that's a game that has north of 6 replays on average, which is great because it's just more gamey, right? Yep. We have a game called Match, which is very similar to Candy Crush, basically swapping images. You're answering before and throughout the levels, different questions. So those are all recall games, right?
Okay.
But then we also have games that are more like scramble games where you have to basically drag and drop different things into different categories, gotcha. Focusing on categorization, focusing on process. We have those soft skill games like scenarios that really helps you understand more about the person's behavioral output. We have the strategy games like Detective. I think we have 10 games altogether, and they're really meant to focus on a variety of both business objectives as well as personal and professional objectives.
You mentioned that person who is a little more trepidatious about getting involved in these type of things, and I've seen it throughout my entire career, where you will have, as people are coming in, the excited gung-ho, let's go, let's do this. You've got the eye roller, but they're still going to play along. And you got the people who just sink into the background and don't want to be noticed. How do these games get all those the different types of players involved?
Well, the first thing is making sure that they're easy to pick up and play, right? So at the end of the day, we don't want to have a game that, the person who's let's do this might be someone who's been playing games forever and is comfortable picking up a deep simulation. We're not going to start there, right? Because that's not for everybody. Right. So making sure that you have games that are easy to understand, easy to play, have little forms of reward along the way, right? So, and also little forms of pressure along the way, right? So you want to make sure that all the games have, time challenges. You want to make sure that they have things like they're celebrating streaks. If you get 3 in a row, make sure that you're talking about that. Make sure you have animations that pop up that are just kind of interesting and have a sense of whimsical, humor to them, right? Mm-hmm. The more that you can actually relate to a person and engage them on a one-on-one basis, I think it's really important. So we try to make sure that our games are easy, are fun, certainly pull people out of their comfort zone a little bit, but give them a safe place to fail, if that makes sense.
Sure. Do you see this type of philosophy of gaming actually going forward and changing the environment itself, or just helping to improve the employee's place in it?
Well, I think that the games themselves are going to help somebody understand the content, prove that they understand the content, apply that understanding to the content. So yes, I think that last part, the application, I think that will change, the outcome of a particular organization or situation. That's one. But when it comes to gamification, I feel like that as a whole can change an organization. I think if you have lots of people rowing in the same direction, doing certain things, and once again, it's about gamification. It's less about a game. It's about taking real world situations and incentivizing and applying game mechanics and game theory to other situations. So if you're able to take game theory and game components and say, we want to make sure that we're incentivizing and motivating our employees to do certain things, that's going to change that company. That's going to change the culture. That's going to change the outcome.
I think just having that, like you were calling it, that safe space to fail will be a huge dynamic shift from what it was before. Yeah.
Big time. And quite honestly, not only fail, but repeat and try again. And I think that's really important, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you don't want someone to say, well, I got that wrong, too bad. You want someone to say, I got that wrong, but I think if I try again, I could get it right. And the good thing is if they get it right in your virtual world, hopefully they'll get it right in the real world. And that's what any company wants. They want their employees to be successful in the field on the job. So why not have them spend, whether it's 5 minutes or 15 minutes playing a game and really digesting the content, trying out different skills so that they can apply it in the real world and be successful. It ultimately is going to save the company or make the company a lot more money.
What about the higher ups? Where do they exist in all of this? Are they going to be part of the process as well? You're looking management level and above.
Well, yeah. I mean, so we see that management teams engage on two levels. So the first level is, because these games are so data rich, that gives management a real indication as to what people know and how they behave. So I think, the nice thing is when you think about traditional training and employee engagement, overall, there's not that much data that can be, succinctly provided to management to help them understand their employee base. So that's the first thing. And I think that's really important. But it's not just, for them to deploy training for their employees and say, we'll sit back here and watch and good luck with everything. At the end of the day, I believe that all employees, whether you're, right out of school and first day on the job or you're, 40 years into your career, at the end of the day, we all have room for growth. So, it may not be a recall game. Maybe it is, but maybe it's about a management training game. Maybe it's about soft skills. Maybe it's about figuring out how to negotiate better. Maybe it's about figuring out how to manage better. Maybe it's figuring out how to analyze better. At the end of the day, there's a game for, in my mind, a game mechanic in my mind for all forms of all periods of your career, all genders, all age. I think it's just finding the right ones that match that person, right, and that situation.
Okay. Let's look to the future a little bit. Where do you see the gamification progressing, and what kind of benefits can we look for?
So I would say that 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, there were certain pockets that games were great for. I mean, sales training is probably the best one, right? It's a very competitive nature. But what we found is that as a result of so much moving to a virtual world and trying to figure out how to engage people as a whole and keep people motivated to participate in the company overall, where I've seen is that today we have several hundred companies and several million learners on our platform. And what's neat is that you can use gaming for so many different things. Let's look at a few examples. We have a number of call centers using our games to engage their employees. And it's interesting that call centers, they share something that a lot of companies have, whether it's retail or quick service restaurants or whatnot, they have incredibly high turnover. So how do you make sure that as you have new employees coming in who have to understand product, they have to understand service, understand process. And by the way, you got, 5 days to train them on all of that, and you want to rinse and repeat, you want to make sure that that's easy. So I think that's a really easy area. And thinking about if you're at a large company, we're going to have high turnover and you have potentially people who are looking to, we're not looking to read long manuals and, go through long videos and whatnot. That might be a great way to engage them with the content. So that's a starting point. But then, we also take it to a totally different spectrum. We see management consulting firms using games, right? We talk about thinking about, how do you really, this comes down to soft skills and strategic skills, right? And really understanding situations and going through different simulations and understanding what the repercussions of their decisions are. And that could be on anything from, as I mentioned earlier, change management or thinking about growth strategy or talking about positioning overall. And there's lots of game mechanics that can really simulate those situations. So I think the neat thing is that companies are seeing that the more that they can have someone really get behind a screen and try something in a virtual world and learn from it, they'll be able to apply those skills that they've gained in the real world, and ultimately saving or driving a lot more revenue to the company.
Thank you so much, Steven. This was a fantastic conversation. Thank you for coming on and being a part of it. I could go on for another easily half hour, but that's a long podcast. We don't want to force anybody to sit through that. But ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together one more time for Steven Bear. Steven, can you tell my team out there where they can find you and more information about this topic?
Yeah, by all means. So if you come to thegameagency.com, that's our services business. And if you go to thetrainingarcade.com, that is our product. And I encourage you to take a look at it. Also, just we love working with TeamBonding. We've been partnered with them for the last few years. So you don't have to come directly to us. You can go directly to them as well if you're looking to do events. But I appreciate the opportunity to chat, and always passionate about the topic. So thanks so much.
Yeah, no, it's a great topic. It's a great conversation. And it's something that even being in this business, I hadn't thought about where it's going to go from here. So thanks so much for coming on board. I'm kind of sucking up to you a little bit right now, Steven, just so you know, because as I told you before we began, it's time for my speed round. They gave me this great soundboard, so I got to get all the cheese with it. All right, my friend, so this is how this is going to work. In 60 seconds, I'm going to ask you a series of innocuous questions. You just give me the fastest answers you can. The idea is to answer as many questions as possible within 60 seconds. If you are feeling competitive at all, if that is what your nature is when it comes to gaming, the number to beat is 13. 13 questions. All right?
Can I ask you a question? Am I going to know any of the answers? That's what I really want to know.
What's that?
Will I know any of the answers to this or no?
It's all about you. This is all like conversational, quick answer things for you. So yes, you will know all of these. It's not like I'm going to ask you, like, what did I eat for breakfast today?
Okay, good. I don't know the answer to that. All right, okay, I'm ready.
All right. So with that in mind, as soon as you hear the music, I'll ask the first question, and away we go. What's your name?
Steve Bear.
How many kids do you have?
3.
Which one's your favorite?
Arlo.
Hey, if you could time travel, where would you like to go?
Turkey, 1932.
Okay. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Mint chocolate chip.
Nice. Best childhood memory?
Snow blowing business. That was my first business.
Excellent. Favorite holiday?
Hanukkah.
If you could eat any food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Chicken.
If you could be a cartoon character for a week, which one would you like to be?
Woody Pecker.
If you could have dinner with anyone from history, who would it be?
Oh, gosh. I'm trying to remember. I would say George Washington.
Okay. Favorite childhood book?
Nancy Drew series.
Are you a leader or a follower?
Leader.
I'll give it to you. Are you ready? How do you think you did?
I think I got 13.
Do you think so?
I have no idea.
You actually got, my friend, 11. 11 correct answers. I say correct answers.
It was the going back in history. And
it was. See? You got to have these things ready to go, buddy. That's how you do it. All right.
I have something to aspire to. You see, you've motivated me to try again in the future.
Good. Well, hopefully we'll get to have you back sometime soon so we can see if you can do better. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, please, one more time, a big round of applause for Steven Bear. Steven, thank you so much for coming on board.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
But that's it, gang. It is one more time to wrap up Team Building Saves the World. If you're new to the podcast, just happen upon it, or you're an old fan of the podcast, thank you so much for coming on and listening to us today. Please share this information with everybody that you may know, whether they're a coworker, a friend, a family member. We would love to spread the news of this really important topic to the world. Also, if you'd like to find out more about us, you can look at all of our previous podcasts at teambonding.com/podcast. You can also find us on Spotify, Google, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. We will be there. We're also on all the social medias at Team Bond Podcast. So please go ahead and click on it and, learn about us and leave a comment that I can possibly read in future episodes. That would be great. But for now, my friends, that's going to be it for me and another episode. So thank you so much for coming on board with us. I hope you've enjoyed yourself as much as I've enjoyed being here. And always remember, my friends, no matter where you are in the world, you are now a part of my team, and I am forever going to be on yours. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you next time.
It's been said that you learn more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. So why not put your coworkers to play with the help of the team at TeamBonding? TeamBonding was founded over 20 years ago with one simple question. How can employees have a great time while fostering strong, authentic bonds between people who work together? Their catalog of innovative events includes scavenger hunts, Jeopardy, and much more. Each activity, whether live, virtual, or hybrid, maximizes the impact of team building with an accent on fun. Visit TeamBonding.com to schedule your event now. Team Bonding, when you want seriously fun results.